right, well, welcome to video 2 of land navigation. Now, one of the things that I see quite a bit on YouTube and blog posts is a recommendation for a compass and map and ranger beads as kind of your foundational navigation tools for things like bug out bags and survival kits. And what I think, in my personal opinion, is that I think that in order to best understand land navigation, you should probably start with better tools. Introducing a lensetic compass, using a state map, and ranger beads just creates a lot of noise and a lot of confusion, and sets you up with some frustration if you're starting out with those wrong tools and not understanding how to use them. So I say get rid of these. Let's not worry about that. And my first priority in teaching is going to be map reading and understanding maps. And so we're going to talk a little bit first about map reading before we get into some of these compass skills. The compass has a role with map reading, and what it does is it creates a sense of precision in your navigation. You can totally navigate 90% of the time by reading your map without needing to use your compass, other than to do two things. It's going to confirm your position, and it's going to orient yourself. So this technology, the compass technology, has been around for a long time. It's developed quite a bit since the early, thousands of years ago, the early Chinese lodestone, to the incorporation of map and compass, or navigation skills, by Arabic explorers, to the discovery and the ability to calculate longitude by the English. So all of these things are just great milestones in which we've better understood and better able to apply navigation skills in this kind of rich history of exploration. And as we've hit these different milestones, we've been able to get out further into places with more security and more assurance on in our ability to move through those more remote areas. And that's pretty much what we want to focus on here with the skill sets in this video series, is the ability to give you more confidence and more security in your wilderness travel. So quite often, many courses start out with trying to understand and reading a topographical map. And I'm going to say, let's forget that, and let's start with something a little bit more easy to read, which is a city map. And I'm going to say we're also going to start without any kind of expensive tool. We're just going to start with a very simple starter compass. And I think that when we start at the very beginning and try to get some fundamentals down, that's going to help you understand what the role is of using your map and compass. So as I said before, the compass has two roles. The first role is to find position, and the second is to find orientation. So when we talk about orientation, you've probably heard this term before, to orient yourself, or to orient a map. What that refers to is, it's a Latin term. Back in the day, in the early days of exploration, maps were lined up, you could say, or oriented to the east. So east was our main reference point. Orients, the root word of orient, comes from Latin, which means where paradise lies, and it's in reference to the sun rising in the east. So it's a religious and reference of the sun rising, S-O-N versus S-U-N. Okay, so a lot of things were oriented then, or a lot of focus was oriented to the east, and that's where early explorers would do. Today, we orient everything to the north. So it's very different, and we'll talk about that in more detail later on. The other function that the compass is going to do is it's going to help us find our position. Position is where we are on the map as it relates to some kind of grid pattern, okay, some kind of Cartesian XY axis on the map here, okay? And we'll get into more detail on what that means when we get into some more details on map reading. So the compass, the modern day compass, like this base plate compass, really serves two functions. It's really two tools in one. It's a planning tool and an executing tool. In its planning phase, the compass can be used out of context from the field and used as a protractor to measure the distance between 2 points, essentially, okay? The angle distance between 2 points. That's what we call a bearing. It can also be used in the field, which is called when we find an angular measurement as it relates to horizontal plane. I know this sounds confusing. That's what we call an azimuth. Azimuth is an Arabic term that comes from Azimuth, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which translates to the way. So you can think of azimuth as the way that you're going to travel. So we refer to shooting an azimuth, and we often refer to finding your bearings or getting your bearings, and that's a more general term. And it can be used, it is often used synonymously. It does have two very different meanings, but sometimes people use them, those two interchangeably. So a bearing is just basically the separation between 2 points, and it can refer to cardinal directions. It can refer to in degrees. It can refer to mils. It could be pretty much anything. It's much more general. Whereas an azimuth is going to be that vertical plane in which you're staying on. That's going to be consistent over the course of land. Okay, so it gets a little confusing, but you just want to remember that your map and compass is used together to create precision in your travel. So for the most part, in most conditions, you're going to be able to use your map effectively for most of your navigation. So if you don't have the right map, or you don't have the ability to read your map, then your compass isn't going to be much help. So we really want to focus on our map reading skills before we move into understanding our compass. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get caught up. Okay, so our next video is going to be on reading a map.